Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look then at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what is making those headlines with Salma Shah, broadcaster and political commentator, and Polly Mackenzie, director of the Demos think tank, both with us from now until just before midnight. So welcome to both of you. As ever, let's take a look first of all at those front pages, starting with the Metro. Shot in the back, that is the headline, which leads on what it calls clear evidence of Russian war crimes in Ukraine, the shooting of unarmed civilians caught on camera. The growing row over the Northern Ireland Protocol leads the Telegraph, which quotes the former Brexit minister, Lord Frost, as saying Boris Johnson should rip up the deal with the same toughness that he's shown over Ukraine. The Eye, meanwhile, says the House of Lords is trying to stop the deal being scrapped. And The Guardian says that the US is so concerned that it's sending a team of influential congressmen to the UK to try to intervene. The Daily Mail reports that Boris Johnson has ordered a massive cut in the civil service to free up money for tax cuts. And with more fines issued over Partygate, The Mirror says Downing Street is now the home of the UK's worst COVID lawbreakers. The Financial Times has news of problems with the cryptocurrency market after an important stabilising part of the trading chain, known as Tether, lost its link to the US dollar and tumbled in value. While The Sun reports that its writer, Deborah James, is to be made a dame in recognition of her high-profile fight against cancer. She is currently receiving end-of-life care. Well, just a quick reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out those front pages while you watch the programme. So let's bring in our guests now. Salma Shah and Polly Mackenzie. Welcome to both of you. So perhaps not surprising, given what we saw in Brussels today, the issue over the border in the Irish Sea making many a front page. Where are we at then? Daily Telegraph quotes Lord Frost, but Polly, you take us through this one.
So Lord Frost is very keen for the Prime Minister to basically suspend the protocol that would require legislation, which Liz Truss has talked about, didn't quite make it into the Queen's speech. And he has given a speech in the United States at the right-wing Heritage Foundation, basically making this case, and also, intriguingly, telling Joe Biden, the President of the United States, to stop lecturing us. Which is an odd thing to say in a lecture in someone else's country about the president of that country, but nevertheless, we are where we are. What's just astonishing about this, even though, again, we're stuck in this nightmarish situation, is that this is the deal which people voted for under the banner of Get Brexit Done. They said this was an oven-ready deal. They said it was perfect. Boris Johnson said there would be no checks in the Irish Sea. And now they're complaining that the deal that they signed and celebrated has this problem in it. Everybody told them there was a problem. Nevertheless, we are in a really difficult situation because following the Northern Ireland Assembly elections, there isn't cross-community support for the protocol. The DUP are refusing to go into a power-sharing arrangement with Sinn Féin, who topped the poll, partly because of the protocol. Of course, the problem is there isn't cross-community consent for suspending the protocol either, another fact that Lord Frost unfortunately seems to gloss over.
Yes, the Telegraph saying the protocol was agreed to stop the need for goods checks at the land border, critically for the Good Friday Agreement, as you said, between Ulster and the Republic. But the level of red tape demanded by the EU on shipments arriving in Northern Ireland from Great Britain has spooked unionists. Feels like separation, does it not, from Great Britain? Hilary Benn made an interesting intervention in Brussels today to Maroš Šefčovič, the lead negotiator on this, saying, you waived the rules on medicines, which was really critical. Why can't you do it, for example, for things arriving in supermarkets in Northern Ireland that are not intended to go anywhere else? So where does the fault lie in this, and how dangerous is it if the UK starts to threaten to pull parts of this deal?
I think the thing we've got to remember in this circumstance is that the triggering of Article 16 is a process that we have to go through. And the I, obviously, is talking about that process and how that process can be, scrutinised by Parliament. And certainly certain lordships are making it clear that they wouldn't just allow this legislation to go through unamended or easily if that is what the government decides to do. So we have the rhetoric that is coming from people like Lord Frost and on the front page of the Telegraph that is all about ripping up a deal. But in reality, this is something that exists within the conditions of the protocol that requires Article 16 that can be triggered unilaterally, and for it to require legislation and further discussion. So even if you start that process, actually, it's going to take quite a while for you to be able to go through it and work out some kind of accommodation that helps. I do think that, the difficulty here for the government is exactly as Polly highlighted, that it is something that we did sign up to. Although I go back to my original point that, the triggering of Article 16 is there for a reason, because if it doesn't work, it also endangers the Good Friday Agreement, because we do not have an executive in Northern Ireland at the moment. And we've been in this situation before, and the ultimate outcome is not going to be good for the Northern Irish people if we sort of descend into this rhetoric war with the EU.
Yes, and obviously this brought into sharp focus by those National Assembly elections last week. But for all those people at home thinking, oh my goodness, it's years since Brexit, surely this is all done and dusted. Can't we just get rid of it? And why are you still talking about it? We turn to The Guardian, which suggests that a US team is flying in because they're so worried about it. We know that Joe Biden is absolutely committed to the Good Friday Agreement and the US's role as a guarantor. Suggestions that any trade deal between the UK and America would be flummoxed by this. But Polly, remind us why this is so important. The integrity of the UK, unionists would say, is at stake here.
Oh, well, it is. We have established, because we have left the European Union, and we've made it really clear that we want to have different rules about imports and exports than the European Union. That's perfectly reasonable, except for the fact that if you want to have different rules for the imports and exports between the United Kingdom and the European Union, then the European Union needs a border between us and it. The problem is nobody wants to have a real physical land border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the island of Ireland, because part of the Good Friday Agreement is that there shouldn't be checks there. And so, therefore, in order to protect the territorial integrity of the European Union, the agreement was that we would instead put the checks in the Irish Sea. And, of course, it's incredibly frustrating to not be able to send goods from one part of the United Kingdom to another part of the United Kingdom. But if you have complete freedom, how precisely is the European Union supposed to ensure that goods we've decided to let in from Brazil or the United States or wherever it might be that they don't want? Literally, what is the plan without checks between Northern Ireland and Ireland to stop them going in? And it's reasonable for us to say that the checks in the Irish Sea are very difficult, but we thus far have come up with nothing really to actually meet what the European Union is asking for, which is just as reasonable. If they are allowed to have import and export checks as determined by their own rules.
Well, let's just have a look at the eye. Salma, you've already mentioned it, obviously, but it suggests that the Foreign Secretary's plans to scrap parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol could be delayed by up to a year. I wonder if we can see the eye again, with peers believed to be ready to obstruct the necessary legislation. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm going to move on, if you don't mind, to the Daily Mail with a suggestion that up to a fifth of civil servants' jobs could go, 91,000, the Daily Mail tells us, which would save about £3.5 billion a year, freeing up resources to help ease the cost of living through, tax cuts possibly. Now, Salma, do they always go towards chopping civil service jobs as a way to free up money? And is it viable to do that, do you think?
So Polly and I will both recall, we both served in the coalition government when there was a big contraction in the size of the civil service. And I think the way that this is being presented in the Mail is sort of, it speaks to a headline, and it speaks to, this idea that, okay, if we cut out the civil service, we're cutting out some kind of management fat. In reality, that's not really how government works. And if you are embarking on some kind of, as the government says it is, an ambitious program of delivery, taking away those people that actually deliver is counterproductive to that aim. And, also the definition of civil servant, people who work at the border, people who work in agencies like the Passport Agency or the DVLA or anything of that sort are also civil servants. So where are these cuts actually going to happen that's going to deliver 3.5 billion? And that's a one-time cut. This is not something that's going to appear on the balance sheet every year. And those kinds of cuts cost as well, because there's redundancy payments, there's loss of institutional knowledge. It's all that kind of thing that comes as a result of it. So, whilst the headline might seem like it's progressive in terms of making savings and cost cutting, actually an administration like the government doesn't function in exactly the same way as a business would.
Yeah, that's interesting. Mr Johnson told the Daily Mail, we've got to cut the cost of government to reduce the cost of living. He said the civil service had become swollen during the pandemic and more than 90,000 jobs had to go. And of course, a sort of banging heads together session, you might call it, with this Cabinet Away Day today in Stoke-on-Trent, trying to bring to life the Queen's speech, we're told. But no doubt they're also talking about these inventive ideas to try to sort cost of living. Polly, what do you reckon?
I'm afraid I approach this story with deep cynicism. Perhaps there are efficiencies in the civil service. Of course there are. But the idea that the Prime Minister has given departments a month to come up with a plan, and it's written as if, boom, 91,000 jobs will be gone, 3.5 billion saved, and it'll be back in your pocket by sundown. That's absolute nonsense. It takes years and years to make these reductions. As Salma says, during the coalition years from 2010 to 2015, we achieved a really sizable reduction in the number of civil servants. That has ballooned. We've mentioned the pandemic, but also because, I'm afraid to say, of Brexit, we decided to repatriate, to take back control of a whole bunch of policy areas, including our borders, agricultural policy. So we needed to hire a whole bunch of new civil servants to do work that Europeans used to do. Now, again, that's a reasonable choice, but it does require people to do the work. And you then had the pandemic and a massive expansion of public health controls. Again, quite understandable. So this idea that suddenly this is going to put money back in your pockets, nonsense. The reality is if the government wanted to put money into people's pockets, they could do so. They could increase money in the benefit system to reach those who are struggling with heating and eating within their own fiscal targets. If they want to help with the cost of living, they can do so. They don't need to make these cuts. If the cuts are a good idea, they will take time, years, in fact, to implement.
Watching the press preview with me, once again, Salma Shah, broadcaster and political commentator, and Polly Mackenzie, director of the Demos think tank. Welcome back to both of you. So let's go to our next story then, which is, I suppose, would have hit bigger should certain people have been involved in this. Salma, what do you reckon? More fines, considerably more fines, it has to be said, for those who partied in Downing Street.
Yes, so the Met have issued 50 more fines to partygoers who attended and organised a Christmas party on WhatsApp. I think this is the famous one with the cheese and wine. Amazingly, the Prime Minister and other senior people in Number 10 have not been issued with fines. But what's very interesting in this story is that that old character Dominic Cummings has come back up, and he's been tweeting about the fact that actually they had been told that the party was within COVID rules. I don't know who told them and why they couldn't make a judgment themselves, but it was within the rules, and accusing the Prime Minister of throwing junior people under a bus and sort of saying that this would bode very badly for a COVID inquiry that's coming. So lots of the original drama from all of this to unpack in this story. But as you say, something that was such a huge political story a matter of weeks ago has now slightly dissipated and is not even on the front pages.
Just a minute and a half left, so let's just reflect on the Sun front page, which I think many people would agree is a really good use of the honour system for the extraordinary woman who is Deborah James.
Yeah, an incredible woman who's now been made a dame in honor of the campaigning that she has done, and when she revealed that she is now having end of life care, she opened a new fund asking people to buy her a drink. It's now raised more than £3.5 million in just those few days, and I think will be a great testament to her memory and reduce the numbers of people suffering in the way that she and her family have.
And our final story is the news tonight of the great reveal, the platinum pudding. There's a lot on it. Let's just see the picture of the finalists, shall we? There they are. Presumably, well, which is the pudding? Oh, it's right. It's the one standing up at the back. That's a tall thing. To be fair, we think it's that one. This is Gemma Melvin's lemon Swiss roll and amaretti trifle, which beat 5,000 desserts. And she said the inspiration for this was my gran, my nan, and the Queen herself, who had lemon posset, I understand, at her wedding. Salma, tempted?
Not in the slightest. And this is not just because I don't like lemon desserts, but it's a lemon trifle with amaretti, a lemon Swiss roll, actually, trifle with amaretti biscuits. And I'm not sure that I'm convinced by that, but I'm happy if somebody wants to offer me a taste test to finalise my view.
I'm not sure. It sounds rather too complicated to make. Yes, lemon curd Swiss roll, St Clement's jelly, lemon custard amaretti biscuits, mandarin coulis, fresh whipped cream, candied peel chocolate shards, and crushed amaretti biscuits. That's beyond me already. I don't know about you, Polly. Very quickly.
Yeah, I just think when you're chopping up two different, like, manufactured desserts, lemon Swiss roll and amaretti biscuits, you've somehow gone wrong. It doesn't quite feel like home baking to me.
Polly Mackenzie, Salma Shah, lovely to have you both on.